Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. After declaring that 2018 was going to be the year of the mod, haven't exactly delivered on that promise. In fact, it's been ages since I made a mod video, but fear not, I've got about 3 coming up, starting with today's Vostok mods. Now, Vostok is where I cut my teeth as a modder. About this time last year, I bought a 710 case and a 420 case, and I modded them both. Pretty simple mods though, just bezels, crowns and straps and so on. I actually gave the 710 away as part of my 20k subs giveaway a number of months ago, but I hung on to the 420. It has been languishing slightly unloved in a drawer. I thought it was high time therefore that I gave it some overdue attention. Now, because I retained the SKX style bezel from the 710, that got me thinking I could utilise SKX bezel inserts in a future modification. Damien from DLW supplied me with a stealth one, and an idea was born that I would redial and rehand my 420 case Vostok, put in this stealth bezel and a beautiful Italian leather strap that I had lurking around, make myself a little desk diving Vostok. So, cross your fingers, here we go. Let's have a look at our starting point today then. A fairly attractive little piece. This is a 420288, so the 420 case paratrooper dial, as you can see, Vostok Amphibia. I already had a couple of mods. It's got a stainless steel crown purchased from Meranom. This is an SKX style bezel and insert, which I picked up on eBay, and it's got a kind of generic $10 18mm Milanese strap on it. So already fairly well modded, but ripe for more mods. So what's going on this one? Well, the inspiration for this mod actually came from the strap. This was a handmade Italian leather number. Actually, it's a 19mm, but I was able to squeeze it onto the 18mm lugs of the Vostok without difficulty, and I thought I should do a kind of dress diver based around that kind of tone of the strap. Picked up this dial, it's a kind of champagne colour. DLW supplied me with this stealth bezel insert, and I've got a set of gilt hands. I'm hoping that that all colour matches quite nicely and gives me a nice blingy but not too blingy dress divey Vostoky. I shouldn't need too much gear either today. Set of screwdrivers, some gloves, a hand puller, hand pusher, case back opener, little movement type holder thing, a dial protector and a puffer to keep the dust out. Okay, so from here on in, I'm going to narrate over my edited footage, some of it in real time, some of it speeded up for expediency. Now, I should point out this isn't necessarily a how-to, it's just a how I did it. I obviously learn with each one of these mod videos, hopefully getting better every time. Started off fairly easily removing the strap with the Bergeon, and then removing the case back with the case back remover. I found that that 3-pronged one was actually better. Now, Vostoks have this fantastic case back. You can take them on and off without damaging the seals because it's a 2-piece case back. Just another unique and quirky design feature of these classic little Soviet watches. Alright, next up, crown removal. Now, there's a little pusher there. I use the Bergeon at this point. I then decide that a pin is a better idea. You extend the crown as far as it will go, you depress that little pusher, and hey presto, with a bit of effort, the crown should just slide out. Next up comes the gasket. There is a rubber seal on the back of the case here, and it's a fairly easy job just to tweak that one out, making sure you put it safely somewhere for later. Next, the rotor. The last thing you want is for the rotor to be spinning while you're working on the watch and also charging up the movement. My screwdrivers that I'm using today probably aren't as thin as I would like them to be. I'm going to buy something slightly smaller, but easy enough job. Remove it, take the screw, again putting it somewhere safe, and flip out the rotor itself, leave it to one side for reinsertion and reassembly later on. Next job, there are 2 screws that hold the movement holder and the movement together. Again, my screwdrivers were a little thick for this, but with a little bit of perseverance, I was able to extract both of those. And we're going into double time, triple time here. As you can see, pretty straightforward, these Vostoks. They're good watches for modification if you don't fancy playing around with a Seiko. Most of the parts I bought from Meranom, the dial, all of them are interchangeable, the hands, etc. And they're not that expensive. Generally, the most expensive thing about buying from Meranom is the shipping price. So good idea to buy multiples at once. So those 2 screws removed, the movement holder comes off, and all you do thereafter, the crown's out, is just flip it onto a movement holder mat, removing the case, and leaving that to one side. Again, we'll be back for that later on. So with the movement dial and hands ready to go, I'm going to remove the hands next. Now I bought this little Bergeon dial protector. I bought a couple of them from Amazon earlier on this year. You can make your own out of a bit of paper or a poly bag or something. You don't have to have one of these little bits of equipment. They just look like a guitar pick, to be honest, with a little sliver cut out of them. This is a Presto hand remover. I don't think I did the best job here either, but it got the job done. I think I ended up actually crushing the hour hand. Not a big issue in this case. This is a kind of a unique one. I don't intend to reverse these mods, having just replaced the hands. They're only a couple of dollars. But perhaps I should be buying another one of those hand removers. That one is not the finest. It's all cheap eBay equipment, a couple of dollars each. Now, next up, removing the dial. 2 screws, one either side, as you can see there, holding the dial feet and the dial together. Again, my screwdriver's a little bit thick for this. I've got a couple on order, but easy enough job. Just unscrew the 2 of those, and once you have got them released, you just get a little screwdriver down the edge of the dial, and the dial should come pretty much popping straight off without much of a difficulty. Now the dial I'm going to put on this one doesn't have a date window, but I thought I would just leave the date wheel there in case I do want to reverse these mods, and I thought basically, why make extra effort for yourself today, Jody? The more parts you have to take off a watch, the more potential there is to bugger it up. So I just put it straight on top. Nice and easy, the 2 feet go into those 2 holes, and we reverse the process, tightening up the 2 screws on the side. Again, this is a kind of scuba dude dial, one of the famous scuba dude dials, but it did have that nice champagne colour. I thought it would be suitable as a bit of a dress diver. So here come the hands, again purchased from Meranom, just gilt hands. They come in that nice little pill case. I haven't taken them out to this point. Not bad loom on these Vostoks, to be honest. I start sweating at this point though. The hands is definitely the most difficult part of a mod. 3 hands, 3 times the capacity to bugger something up. Now, I left the watch as close as I could to midday. Not such a big issue because I'm not going to be using the date function in this one from now on. You line up the hour hand first, getting it seated on the pinion, pointing as close to 12 as you possibly can. Now the die that I'm using, the kind of little pusher that I'm using here is quite a wide one, so it gives plenty of space either side of the pinion. Now to confirm, I just pushed it down again. At this point though, I put the crown back in. You can see me using a pin here, put the crown back in, again being careful not to crush the hands now that I've started to put hands on it. These Vostok crowns are unique. The third pull though, once you get beyond the winder, there we are, and it looks like the crown has engaged. I'm rolling it all the way down to 6 so that I've got plenty of space to put on the minute hand next. So, minute hand, a little more difficult than the hour hand. They do get more difficult as they go along, but this one wasn't too bad. I just used the same die as before, gave it a couple of presses and made sure that I had seated it, but not crushed the pinion in the process. Again, there we are, just testing that it all works fine and that the minute hand doesn't foul the hour hand. Now, I did decide it was a little curved. These are a little curved anyway, the Vostok hands. I decided a little bit of an extra tweak there just to get a bit more clearance, and then applying the second hand. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. I didn't do too badly today. The Vostok didn't seem to be all that challenging. Certainly not as bad as some Seikos that I put the hands in. Using a smaller die, pretty much just a flat die there. And as you can see, hallelujah, the second hand is spinning. So that's 3 hands on. Pretty good job there. I was quite pleased with myself. Now, it gets a bit fiddly. I should have had a movement holder here, but just holding the thing vertically, putting that pin in and removing the crown once more. So on to the fun part. Let's get this bezel off and put the new bezel insert in. A bit of tape which managed to stick to my gloves, my map on the desk, everything else. Flat bladed knife and a satisfying pop when these ones come off. It was pretty simple. This bezel's been on and off a couple of different watches a couple of different times. Bezels on Vostoks, again you can adjust the tension. There's a spring clip underneath there. We're not going to discuss that today because I didn't use it. I got one of these iSesamo things that's a tool for cracking open iPhones. Just managed to slip that under the original SKX bezel insert, which had been well glued actually because this one was aftermarket and not from from Seiko. With a little bit of persuasion, as they say, I managed to work that away around the underside of the bezel insert and remove it. Again, not planning on reversing this mod, so I wasn't all that careful about the bezel insert. A little bit of professional alcohol, something I know all about, being a professional alcoholic. A little bit of that rubbing away, managed to clear all that up. Now, this next feature here, GS Hypo Cement. This I got from Mark at Long Island. I saw him insert a bezel with one of these. Great stuff. Hypodermic syringe, very accurate. I go around it twice, getting enough on here, but not too much. And it lasts forever, that cement. Very ingenious cap mechanism, meaning it doesn't dry out. Worth spending $10 to $20 on one of those. Doesn't matter if you get a little bit too much there, you can always clean that up using some more of the alcohol, but looking pretty good, the stealth insert. And once again, popping it back on, just giving a little bit of brisk pressure on either side. Very satisfying pop. That one gets a thumbs up. It's definitely gone back into the case very well there. Alright, next we're getting on the home stretch, we're putting it back together. I'm just going to turn this movement over very gently, again being careful not to touch the dial with my gloved hands, putting it into the case, again just resting it very gently, roughly lining up where the date wheel was, where the crown goes, before putting in that movement holder. Again, there's the little aperture there, as you can see, at the crown. Now, always a good idea at this point to put the crown in. That clearly lines up the dial exactly as it should go. Once again, using that pin, pushing the crown all the way in, just shuffling that movement holder left and right a little bit, making sure that it's nice and seated, and screwing the crown all the way in, just giving it a little bit of a push for good measure before the two screws that hold it together again. These were a little bit fiddly, it took me a couple of cracks at these, but again, nothing too radical here today. These Vostoks, as mentioned a couple of times, they're pretty simple watches to work with. Screw them back in, crown in place, movement holder in place. Now, tentatively turn it over. Have we got it right? Looks pretty good to me, and it's beginning to take shape nicely. 2 thumbs up for that one, Jody. Well done. You haven't buggered it up again, mate. So from here, it's time to put the rotor on. Again, tiny little screw, not a particularly great screwdriver. This one took me a while. I was wobbling around. I ended up realizing that I was better off pushing it down with my finger and spinning it around there, giving it a little bit of purchase before finishing it off with a screwdriver, just making sure that it wasn't being fouled by the case or anything before putting the gasket in. Again, very straightforward this, just making sure that it's in the right place, seated all the way around before putting the case back on. Now, I just put the case back on finger tight, allowing me to do a final check. I did obviously give the case a puff before I put the dial in, making sure there was no dust on the underside. So just screwing that on finger tight, making sure it was all good. These crowns on the Vostoks, sometimes they don't go quite back in. So I just tested it, making sure that it wasn't going to pull out, making sure that it was all good before I fully tighten up the case back and commit to the closure. Now, because this isn't a new watch, always nice to give an acrylic dial a little bit of a poly watch. If you haven't got some poly watch in your armoury, it's great for the cheap Casios for these Vostoks, and even for more expensive things such as Omega Man on the Moons. Certainly made a difference to this little Vostok, shined it up nicely. And the finishing touch, that lovely Italian vintage leather strap. 19mm lugs as mentioned, so it was a bit of a squeeze, but I think it's a 39 to 40mm case, this one, so having a slightly over-strapped look is not a bad look at all. I've had it on those mesh Milaneses, the 18mm, and it does look a little bit understrapped. I think with a bigger, chunkier bezel, it can take a slightly larger strap, especially that vintage style with that lovely hand stitching just near the lugs. And there it is, quite a transformation from how we were looking less than 15 minutes ago, and I must say I'm really quite pleased with how this one has turned out. When you assemble parts, when you're picking stuff from a catalogue, you're never quite sure how it's going to look in reality. I could have stuck with silver hands here, but I wanted just a little bit of bling, I wanted a little bit of pop, and I think the gilt hands managed to do that nicely. Tones in with the champagne dial, and then that kind of grey, stealthy looking bezel insert from DLW, brown tones on the strap, a little bit of cream there with the stitching as well. Looks great on wrist, wears very well. I have said it before and I'll say it again. If you're a guy with slightly smaller wrists, 6 inch, 6.5 inch, these 420s are probably going to be the Vostoks for you. They do wear very well, and you can bring the look down with a smaller, smoothed off bezel if you so choose. Bit higher for perspective, looks great, great size on my 7-inch wrist, so a kind of vintage dressy style Vostok. I'm really quite pleased. And there it is, out and about in the Sydney sunshine, champagne dial, gold hands glinting away there, but not being overawed by the bezel. I was quite satisfied with how that grey black ceramic bezel looks. Kind of modernises it a little bit, but still looking quite nice and old-fashioned. Really quite pleased with myself. It's been a while since I did a mod video. I didn't do too well modifying a Seiko 7002. That one is coming up. Kind of set me back on my modding journey a little bit, so probably good to get back on the horse, so to speak, with the aid of a trusty Vostok Amphibia. So there you have it, more Vostok mods and successfully modified. Always a relief when it works the way you want it to. I think this one looks absolutely fantastic, and I look forward to wearing it out and about in the near future. Thanks for watching, good luck with the mods, and I'll see you in a future video.